In the age of empires and idols, when shadows of tyranny stretched across the land, a man walked with the fire of heaven in his soul. His name was Jude Thaddeus, a warrior not of sword and steel, but of truth and faith. Known as the apostle of impossible causes, he faced the thrones of kings and the wrath of demons, carrying only the shield of the gospel. His was a mission to defend the innocent, to lift the desperate from despair, and to prove that no darkness can withstand the light of God. This is not merely a story of an apostle. It is the saga of a protector, a mender of broken hopes, and a champion for the lost. Step into his journey, where courage meets the miraculous, and where faith can move mountains. Chapter 1. The Man Behind the Name. Before the roar of crowds, before the miracles and the martyr's crown, there was simply Jude. In the dusty hills of Galilee, among olive groves and quiet fishing villages, a boy grew into a man marked by 2 names and 1 destiny. In Hebrew, he was called Yehuda, the one who praises. To others, he was Thaddeus, the courageous heart. Both names would follow him, and together they painted the portrait of a man destined to stand against the impossible. He was kin to Jesus of Nazareth, cousin, friend, and witness to the mysteries that surrounded him from childhood. Though his family ties to the Messiah were close, Jude did not rely on bloodline for honor. He earned respect in his own right, through honest work, fierce loyalty, and an unshakable sense of justice. In the marketplaces and synagogues, he was known as a man who spoke truth, even when it was dangerous to do so. The land in which he lived was no gentle cradle. Roman soldiers patrolled the roads, and the air was heavy with the tensions of oppression and rebellion. Faithful Jews prayed for deliverance, and whispers of prophets and miracles moved like sparks in the wind. It was in this atmosphere of hope and danger that Jude's character was forged, a man who could face a crowd or a king without trembling, and who saw in every injustice a call to stand firm. He had the strength of a laborer and the mind of a seeker. From a young age, he listened to the words of the law, the songs of David, and the prophecies of Isaiah with a hunger for meaning. He was not a scholar in fine robes, but his faith was not born of ignorance. It was forged in the realities of toil, hunger, and the cries of the oppressed. And so, when the time came, when the carpenter from Nazareth began his public ministry and the call went out, Jude was ready to leave behind the familiar, ready to take up a mission that would carry him across deserts and seas, ready to stand in the company of men who would change the world. But for now, he was still simply Jude, a man of 2 names, 1 heart, and a purpose that had not yet been revealed, though heaven had already chosen him. Chapter 2. Called by the Master. It was an ordinary morning in Galilee, the sun spilling gold over the hills, fishermen casting nets into the sea, merchants opening their stalls. Jude was among the crowd, his thoughts occupied with the work of the day, when a voice cut through the noise of the world. Not loud, not commanding in the way of generals, but carrying a weight that stilled the heart. "Follow me." He turned, and there he was, Jesus of Nazareth, the carpenter's son, the one whose words had begun to ripple through the villages like the first winds of a coming storm. Jude had known him before, as kin and neighbor, but in that moment, he saw something far greater than blood or familiarity. In his eyes was a depth that reached beyond this life. In his presence, the air itself seemed to tremble. Around them, people paused. Some watched with curiosity, others with quiet scorn. But Jude's heart burned. This was the call of the prophets, the summons to stand where angels might fear to tread. Without hesitation, he set down what was in his hands. The tools of the day, the plans for tomorrow, they no longer mattered. That day was the beginning of a journey unlike any other. Jude walked beside fishermen and tax collectors, men from every corner of life, all drawn by the same voice. He saw with his own eyes the wonders that were whispered in the streets. Lepers cleansed by a touch, the blind opening their eyes to the sun, demons cast out with a single word. He listened as Jesus spoke of the kingdom, not a kingdom of stone and iron, but of mercy, justice, and a love that could not be broken. Each step with the Master was a lesson, each miracle a glimpse into the heart of God. Jude began to understand that this was no ordinary teacher. This was the long-awaited Messiah, the Son of the living God, and to follow him would mean both glory and danger, triumph and trial. Yet Jude did not waver. He had left behind the life he knew, and in its place had found a mission worth more than gold, more than safety, more than life itself. The road ahead was uncertain, but he walked it with the certainty of one who had heard the voice of truth and answered without looking back. Chapter 3. Walking in the Company of Lions. To walk beside the Master was to walk in the company of lions. Each of the 12 carried a fire within, a fierce loyalty, a fierce temper, and in some, both. They were fishermen hardened by storms, a tax collector with the cunning of the marketplace, a zealot whose heart still beat to the rhythm of revolt. And now, Jude was among them. Life with the apostles was no quiet pilgrimage. There were debates around the fire, strong words exchanged over the meaning of the Master's parables, and moments when pride threatened to overshadow purpose. Yet, beneath it all, there was a brotherhood forged not by common background, but by a single calling, to walk where Jesus walked and to carry his message to the ends of the earth. Jude learned quickly that each man's strength was also his challenge. Peter's courage could burn into rashness. Thomas's questions could teeter on doubt. Even James and John, the sons of thunder, could be quick to demand heaven's fire on those who oppose them. But Jesus shaped them as a blacksmith shapes steel, tempering their hearts with patience, humility, and love. Together they shared bread and laughter. Together they endured the cold nights on the road, the jeers of the proud, and the unending press of the sick and desperate who sought the Master's touch. And when the days were long and the crowds grew hostile, Jude found strength not only in Jesus' presence, but in the unspoken bond with these brothers in arms. There were moments of wonder that bound them together forever. The sight of a paralytic rising from his bed, the sound of a storm silenced by a single word, the awe of seeing thousands fed from a few loaves and fish. In such moments, Jude knew they were witnessing the turning of an age. Yet even then, the shadow of danger lengthened. Rumors spread of Pharisees and scribes plotting against the teacher. Whispers of betrayal began to coil like serpents in the dark. And still, the 12 pressed on, their mission growing clearer with each mile. The kingdom they served was not of this world, and the cost of their loyalty would one day be everything they had. Chapter 4. The Voice in the Upper Room. Night had fallen over Jerusalem. The city was tense, as if holding its breath, while the streets outside grew quiet under the watch of Roman patrols. In a hidden upper room, the 12 gathered around a table lit by flickering lamps. The air was thick with the scent of bread, wine, and something heavier, the unspoken knowledge that this was no ordinary meal. Jesus moved among them with the calm of one who knows the path ahead, breaking bread, pouring wine, speaking words that would echo through eternity. He spoke of betrayal, of suffering, of a covenant sealed not with ink, but with his own blood. The weight of his words pressed upon them all, and yet there was a light in his eyes that no shadow could touch. Jude listened, his heart pounding. He had walked with the Master for years, witnessed his power, felt the truth in his teaching. But now, hearing that he would soon be gone, a question rose within him, not from doubt, but from the desire to understand the heart of the mission. Leaning forward, he spoke, "Lord, why do you intend to show yourself to us and not to the world?" Jesus turned to him, and in that gaze, Jude felt as though his soul was being read like an open scroll. The answer came with a voice that was both tender and unyielding. "If anyone loves me, he will keep my word, and my Father will love him, and we will come to him and make our dwelling with him." In that moment, Jude understood. The kingdom would not be built by force of arms or the spectacle of thrones. It would grow within hearts willing to be transformed. The world would come to know the Messiah not through grand displays of power, but through the living witness of those who loved him and carried his truth. The words sank deep into Jude's spirit. He realized his mission was not only to defend the innocent or stand against oppressors. It was to bear the presence of Christ wherever he went, so that even the most impossible hearts might be changed. Outside, the city still slept under the weight of its own darkness. Inside, in that upper room, a warrior of the Spirit was being forged, his shield not of iron, but of unshakable faith. Chapter 5: Fire and the Spirit. The room was filled with a sudden, roaring wind, a breath from heaven that swept through the gathered apostles like a raging storm. Tongues of fire danced above their heads, lighting the darkness with a holy blaze. This was Pentecost, the day when the promised Spirit descended, not as a whisper, but as a mighty fire. Jude felt the flame settle within him, burning away fear, doubt, and hesitation. The timid disciple who had once asked questions now stood as a pillar of courage. His voice, once soft with wonder, now thundered with authority and passion. The Spirit was no quiet guide. It was a blazing sword, a shield of light that would cut through lies and kindle faith in the hearts of the lost. The world outside was vast and hostile. Pagan gods ruled many lands, and emperors demanded loyalty to their own thrones. But Jude, armed with the Spirit, moved forward as a warrior of truth, preaching not with the sword, but with words that carried the power to shatter chains and open eyes. In crowded streets and lonely villages, his message was the same. The kingdom of God is at hand. Repent and believe. Where fear had once gripped the hearts of the apostles, now there was fire. Where silence had reigned, there was a voice that would not be silenced. Jude's faith was no longer his own. It belonged to all who sought hope beyond despair. This was the moment the mission truly began. No longer just a follower, Jude was now a messenger, a shield for the innocent, a beacon for the desperate. With the Spirit's fire in his soul, he would cross deserts and seas, face kings and tyrants, and stand firm where others would fall. Pentecost was not just a day. It was the birth of a new courage, the forging a shield that would protect the weak and challenge the impossible. Chapter 6: Land of False Gods. The lands of Mesopotamia and Armenia lay before Jude like a vast wilderness of faith and fear. Here, temples rose to gods forged by human hands, idols carved from stone and wood, silent witnesses to centuries of worship and superstition. But Jude carried no sword to cut down statues. His weapon was the truth, the living word that could shatter falsehoods and ignite new faith. As he entered these territories, the air was thick with tension. Pagan priests watched from their altars, their eyes sharp with suspicion and anger. To them, Jude was a threat, a disruptor of the old order, a herald of God who could not be contained by temple walls or ancient rites. Yet Jude was fearless. With every step, he spoke of the one true God, a God who breathed life into dust, who called the lost by name, who loved the weak and the broken. His words cut through the silence like thunder, challenging the crowds to see beyond stone idols to the living Spirit behind the universe. In the great temples, where incense curled like smoke above flickering flames, Jude faced his fiercest opponents. The priests wielded power and fear, but Jude wielded faith and courage. When they called on their gods to silence him, their idols remained mute. When Jude prayed, miracles stirred among the people. Blind eyes opened, chains fell, hearts broke free. The clash was not only of words, but of realities. Jude was the shield of the innocent, standing between the enslaved souls and the empty promises of false gods. With each victory, the flame of faith spread, igniting hope where despair had ruled for generations. The lands of false gods would not easily surrender, but Jude's mission was clear: to tear down idols not with force, but with the power of a love that conquers all. And so, his journey pressed on, deeper into the heart of darkness, where only the bravest dared to go. Chapter 7: A King's Challenge. The city of Edessa stood proud and defiant, its walls guarding secrets older than memory. King Abgar, a ruler both feared and revered, sat upon his throne surrounded by advisers who whispered of gods and omens. But the king's heart was heavy, afflicted by an illness that no physician could cure, no potion could heal. When news reached him of a man named Jude, a messenger of a new god who performed miracles among common folk, Abgar's curiosity turned to desperation. He sent envoys with a message, "Come to my city, heal me, and show your God's power." Jude did not travel with armies or fanfare. He arrived quietly, a bearer of hope more than heralds. In the great halls of Edessa, where gold gleamed and power reigned, Jude spoke not just of healing, but of a kingdom not built by swords but by faith. When he laid hands on the king, something extraordinary unfolded. The illness that had gripped Abgar's body began to fade, the pain lifting like a storm swept away by a gentle wind. The king rose, astonished not only by the healing of his flesh, but by the transformation stirring within his soul. Word spread swiftly through the city. The God of Jude was real, powerful, and merciful. The priests who once scorned him now trembled as crowds gathered, eager to hear the words of the apostle who had healed their king. But Jude's challenge was far from over. He faced opposition from those who clung to old gods and old ways, men who saw the new faith as a threat to their influence. Yet Jude stood firm, a shield between the innocent and those who would crush them. Through courage, faith, and miraculous signs, Jude changed the course of a kingdom. Edessa would become a beacon of hope in a world shadowed by fear, a testament to the power of a God who moves mountains and heals the broken. Chapter 8. The Shield of the Innocent. In a peaceful village shadowed by looming hills, a storm was gathering, not from the skies, but from the soldiers of a ruthless tyrant. They came like a wave of iron and cruelty, demanding submission, their armor gleaming under the harsh sun, their voices barking orders that struck fear into the hearts of farmers, women, and children. The villagers were defenseless, their tools meant for tilling soil and crafting goods now useless against swords and spears. Panic spread like wildfire. Mothers clutched their children tightly. Elders prayed silently for a miracle. Yet, in the midst of despair, a single figure appeared, Jude. He walked into the village square without hesitation, unarmed, his gaze steady and fierce. The soldiers sneered, mocking the lone man who dared to face them without shield or sword. But Jude's presence was a challenge far greater than they expected, a shield forged not from metal, but from unwavering faith and unshakable courage. With a voice that rang out like a clarion call, he spoke words that cut through the noise. Violence begets only sorrow. There is a power beyond your swords, a power of justice, mercy, and truth. Turn back now, or face a fate far worse than battle. The soldiers hesitated, their confidence wavering, as if an invisible force held them at bay. The villagers, inspired by Jude's bravery, found strength in his stand. Mothers raised their voices in prayer, children stood taller, and even the elders felt hope kindle anew. Time seemed to hold its breath as the two forces faced off, one side armed with steel and fear, the other with faith and resolve. Slowly, the soldiers' cruel resolve cracked. The power of a single man's shield, forged in love and righteousness, was stronger than any sword. By nightfall, the tyrant's forces withdrew, defeated not by bloodshed, but by the courage of one who stood for the helpless. The village was saved, its people forever changed by the man who became their shield, a living testament that true strength lies in standing fearless for those who cannot defend themselves. Chapter 9. Chains cannot bind the truth. Thrown into a dark, damp dungeon, Jude's body was bound by heavy chains meant to crush his spirit. The cold stone walls echoed with silence and despair, a prison designed to extinguish hope. But inside that darkness, a fire burned brighter than ever, the fire of an unbreakable faith. Jude's captors were men hardened by years of cruelty, their faces marked by suspicion and cruelty. They expected fear, rebellion, or silence. What they found instead was calm resolve and a voice filled with light. Night after night, Jude spoke, not to crowds, but to the very guards who chained him. His words were gentle yet powerful, tales of a kingdom where chains fall away and the powerless rise. The jailers, at first indifferent or hostile, began to listen. Something stirred within them, a spark ignited by the prisoners' unwavering hope. Their hardened hearts softened, and doubts crept into their minds, like cracks in stone. In secret moments, Jude shared stories of miracles, love, and redemption. He prayed over his jailers, his hands still bound but his spirit free. One by one, the guards who had come to imprison a rebel found themselves reborn in faith, baptized in the quiet shadows of the dungeon, not as captors, but as brothers united by a truth stronger than chains. Word of this unexpected transformation spread beyond the prison walls, shaking the authorities who feared the growing power of a faith that no prison could contain. But Jude remained steadfast, a living testament that darkness can never imprison a soul set ablaze by the Spirit. His chains could bind his body, but never his message. For truth is a flame that no dungeon, no enemy, no force can ever extinguish. Chapter 10. The Battle in the Temple. The temple stood majestic, its towering columns reaching toward the sky like pillars of an ancient world. Inside, the air was thick with incense smoke, mingling with the chants of pagan priests who prepared for a grand sacrificial ceremony, an offering to gods carved from stone, demanding blood and fire. Jude stepped through the temple's massive doors, his presence like a lightning bolt cutting through the murmur of devotion. The priests sneered, their eyes cold with disdain and suspicion. They saw in Jude a heretic, a disruptor of their sacred rites, a threat to the power they wielded over the people. The crowd gathered, a sea of curious and fearful faces, unsure whether to cheer or cry out. The priests raised their knives, ready to spill blood to please their gods. But Jude raised his hand, and his voice rang out like thunder. Your gods are silent idols, powerless and empty. True life, true power, comes from the one who breathes the stars into existence. The tension crackled like a storm. The priests shouted curses, calling upon their gods to strike him down. But Jude stood unshaken, his faith a shield stronger than any armor. Suddenly, a miraculous sign unfolded. A radiant light burst through the temple's roof, casting out the smoke and darkness. The stone idols trembled and cracked, as if the gods themselves were fading away. The crowd gasped, eyes wide with awe and fear. Many fell to their knees, hearts trembling, as the invisible power of the living God filled the space. The priests, their power broken, fled into the shadows, their voices silenced. Jude's message had cut through the temple's heart, a battle won not by violence, but by a divine sign that shook the foundations of false worship. The people were forever changed, witnessing that day that no idol could stand against the true God. Chapter 11. The Apostle of the Desperate. Across vast lands scarred by war, famine, and oppression, a name began to echo in the whispers of the hopeless. Jude, the apostle of impossible causes. His legend grew not from royal courts, but from the humble voices of those crushed beneath the weight of despair. In dusty villages and crowded cities, where the powerless cried out in silence, stories emerged of miracles that defied all reason. A child thought lost to sickness, suddenly breathing life anew. A family torn apart by conflict reunited by a single prayer. A prisoner bound in iron chains freed without sword or violence. All by Jude's powerful intercession, his prayers a lifeline thrown into the darkest storms. But it was not just the miracles that drew people to him. It was his heart, fierce and tender, unyielding and compassionate. Jude became the shield for the helpless, the voice for the voiceless, the guardian who stood where no one else dared. His presence alone brought courage to trembling souls. Kings and peasants alike sought his counsel. The desperate clutched tokens bearing his image, calling his name as a beacon when all earthly hope had vanished. His name became a symbol, a rallying cry for those who had nowhere else to turn. Yet Jude's path was perilous. Each miracle came at a cost. Each prayer drew enemies closer. He faced threats from tyrants who feared the change he stirred, from priests of false gods whose temples trembled under his words. But Jude never wavered. His faith was an unbreakable shield, forged in the fires of conviction and love. He traveled tirelessly, crossing deserts, climbing mountains, and navigating treacherous seas, always drawn to the places where suffering was greatest. With every step, he carried the promise that no cause was too impossible, no darkness too deep for the light of God to conquer. The world may have tried to silence him, to chain him, to erase his message. But Jude's spirit blazed like a comet across the sky, igniting hope in the hearts of the desperate. A warrior whose shield was faith and whose battle cry was mercy. Through him, the impossible became possible, and the forgotten found a champion. Chapter 12, Brothers in Arms. The bond between Jude and Simon, the Zealot, was more than mere companionship. It was a sacred alliance forged in the fires of faith and tempered by countless trials. Two apostles, walking together through lands where shadows stretched long and dangers lurked in every corner, united by a singular mission, to spread the light of Christ where darkness reigned. Simon, once a zealot who fought fiercely for his beliefs with sword in hand, had transformed into a warrior of peace. His fiery spirit burned not with anger, but with an unquenchable passion to liberate souls from spiritual bondage. Jude's calm courage was the steady flame that balanced Simon's fierce zeal, creating a harmony that inspired those who witnessed their journey. Their path was far from easy. They crossed jagged mountain passes where bitter winds bit like knives, traversed vast deserts where the sun scorched the earth and thirst gnawed at their bodies, and ventured into cities thick with suspicion and hostility. Each step was a battle, against not only hostile rulers and pagan priests, but against their own fatigue and doubt. In marketplace squares and humble homes, they preached boldly. Their voices carried the message of mercy and redemption, healing the sick, comforting the brokenhearted, and challenging false gods with unshakable truth. Side by side, they faced angry mobs and hostile authorities, their faith a shield that no sword could pierce. But it was during their final journey that their bond would be tested like never before. Word of their mission had spread, and powerful enemies conspired to silence them forever. As they pushed deeper into perilous territories, the air grew thick with menace. Spies lurking in the shadows, betrayal whispered among allies, and dangers unseen around every corner. Yet Jude and Simon moved forward, unyielding. They shared stories and prayers during quiet nights, their friendship a beacon against the encroaching darkness. In moments of exhaustion, they reminded each other of the greater purpose, that their sacrifices would ignite hope far beyond their own lifetimes. Together, they faced ambushes and threats, but neither faltered. Their hearts were locked in a pact stronger than fear, stronger than death. Brothers in arms in a spiritual battle, they carried not only their own courage, but the faith of countless souls awaiting salvation. This was more than a journey. It was a testament to the power of unity, faith, and brotherhood. Side by side, Jude and Simon blazed a trail of light through the darkest night, knowing that even if they fell, their legacy would endure forever. Chapter 13, The Martyr's Victory. As the sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting long shadows over the rugged hills, Jude and Simon found themselves encircled by enemies, a swarm of angry men determined to silence their message forever. Though vastly outnumbered, their hearts burned with a fire far stronger than any blade or arrow. The air crackled with tension. Around them, the cries of battle rose, mingled with the desperate prayers of bystanders and the clashing of steel. But Jude's spirit stood unshaken, a steadfast beacon amid the storm. His gaze, steady and resolute, cut through the chaos like a sword of light. He spoke words of hope, calling the frightened and the faithful alike to stand firm, reminding them that even in the face of death, faith remains unbreakable. With each word, his courage radiated, fortifying those around him. The battle surged. Arrows flew, some grazing flesh, others striking true, but Jude moved with grace, shielded by a courage born not of this world. Swords clashed, but his heart never faltered. Even as wounds appeared, his voice never dimmed, proclaiming the victory that comes from spirit, not flesh. Simon fought fiercely beside him, a whirlwind of passion and strength. Together, they formed an unyielding front, brothers not just in arms but in soul. Though their bodies faced the fury of their foes, their souls soared with an unshakable conviction. In the final moments, as the enemies closed in, Jude's gaze lifted toward the heavens, a silent prayer of surrender and triumph. Though his body fell, his spirit exploded like a radiant star, leaving a legacy that would burn eternally in the hearts of the faithful. Word of their martyrdom spread swiftly, carried on the winds of countless lands. Jude's shield of faith became a symbol, a rallying cry to those facing impossible odds. His victory was not of this world, but eternal, a triumph of light over darkness, courage over fear, life over death. Chapter 14: Miracles Beyond the Grave. Though Jude's earthly life had ended in sacrifice, his story was only just beginning. Across the windswept continents and through the corridors of time, whispers of miracles began to rise. Miracles so profound they defied explanation, yet carried the unmistakable mark of Jude's divine intercession. In villages stricken by disease, where despair hung thick as a shroud, desperate prayers to Jude brought sudden healing. A child on the brink of death, restored to laughter and life. A mother's long-sought pregnancy fulfilled against all odds. These were not mere coincidences, but signs that Jude's shield still protected those who sought his aid. Travelers lost in hostile lands spoke of an unseen guide, a comforting presence that led them to safety. Soldiers wounded in battle awakened with renewed strength, their survival credited to the apostles' invisible hand. The impossible became possible, and hope flourished where once there was only darkness. Pilgrimages to sites associated with Jude multiplied. Faithful from distant lands journeyed, carrying tokens, prayers, and burning candles, seeking solace and miracles. Churches dedicated to him sprang up, becoming havens of light in troubled times. Even rulers sought his blessing, adorning themselves with medals and relics bearing his image, believing in the protective power of the apostle who stood for the desperate. His influence transcended borders and cultures, a unifying beacon across the fractured world. These miracles beyond the grave were not just acts of magic, but testimonies of faith, living proof that Jude's spirit endured, that his shield extended beyond death, guarding and guiding the faithful through every storm. And as the centuries passed, the stories only grew stronger, inspiring generations to trust in the power of faith and the intercession of the apostle who turned impossible causes into miracles. Chapter 15: A Patron for the Ages. Through the sweeping tides of history, Jude's name has echoed like a timeless anthem, a symbol of hope, courage, and unyielding faith. Known as the patron saint of impossible causes, his legacy spans continents and centuries, touching the lives of millions who seek a light in their darkest hours. From humble peasants praying in small chapels to kings and queens lighting candles in grand cathedrals, Jude's presence is felt everywhere. His story bridges ancient worlds and modern struggles, reminding all who call upon him that no battle is too fierce, no burden too heavy for faith to overcome. His image, often portrayed holding a flame or a shield, is a reminder that courage and protection walk hand in hand. When the hopeless face crises that seem insurmountable, they turn to Jude's intercession, trusting in a power that moves mountains and heals wounds unseen. Throughout wars, plagues, and personal tragedies, prayers to Jude have kindled hope and sparked miracles. His patronage is not just for the lost and desperate, but for anyone daring to believe in the impossible. a warrior of light in a world often shadowed by fear. Today, millions wear medals bearing his image, carry his prayer cards, and invoke his name in moments of need. His legacy continues to inspire new generations to stand firm, to fight with faith, and to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Jude is more than an apostle of old. He is a beacon across time, a protector of souls, and a patron for the ages. And as long as hope endures in the human heart, his story will blaze on, a shield for the innocent and a champion for the desperate, forever. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through the life and legacy of Jude Thaddeus, the shield of the innocent, the apostle of impossible causes. Your time and faith in these stories keep the spirit of courage, hope, and devotion alive. If this tale inspired you, please consider subscribing to our channel for more epic adventures into the lives of the saints. Until next time, may the shield of Jude protect you, and may your faith move mountains.